Hi, I'm Tash from the Lair. I've been sewing for a few months now and I've made a lot of beginner projects. Some that have worked really well and some not so well, but I've learnt a lot along the way. And a lot of the projects that I have made, I'm using in everyday life now, even with their mistakes. So in this video, I wanted to go through some of the things I've made, show you all of the mistakes that I've made and what I've learned from that experience, so that I know how to do it better for next time. Because I feel like with sewing, and one of the most daunting things for me was that I had no idea there was a method to doing all of it or understanding why things were done in a particular order. And I want to show all of this because I feel like this is often the part that you don't see very much, the things that aren't always shared. So it's the learning and the redoing, or just accepting the way it is and using it anyway because there is beauty in the imperfections. I also want to show you some of the things that don't quite go to plan and how I solve them along the way. So without further ado, let me show you. This is an L, obviously, for the lady layer, a sign which I've yet to put up. But this is just stuffed with a bunch of scraps, so it's really kind of knobbly. As you can see, the edging is still a bit rough and ready, and you know, this is all peeling. So I think what I would do next time is have a set of pinking shears to nice and neatly tidy up all of those edges, and it would give it a really nice pattern as well. Next up is the sewist's favorite tool, a pin cushion. So this was one of my first projects, trying to get really nice straight seams and then experience with hand stitching as well. Obviously this is an incredibly useful thing, but one of the things I learned was that hand stitching is another art in itself. This is where I had to sew it closed, and my stitching's all over the place because number one, I'd stuffed it too full, so it was really difficult to close, and number two, I don't know how to sew anything closed, but really useful. And I've got some Velcro here, so then it attaches to the side of my machine. Next is a glasses case. This is basically just a big square with one of the corners rounded and then folded together. This was one of my really early projects before I knew what interfacing was, and look how floppy it is. I didn't think interfacing was necessary. So the inside layer is actually just another piece of cotton fabric that was scrap. But this is so useful. Yeah, it looks really rough because I think that was the first time I'd ever used a zigzag stitch. So it's pretty ugly, but so useful. Here's probably one of my favorite items that I've shown before, my wonky coaster. My first go at properly quilting, trying to get 4 pieces together in a nice, neat square, and then folding it inside out to get this nice pattern and then a circle. As you can see, it is not perfectly circular, nor is my stitching particularly straight. You can even see there that the pieces of fabric don't even come together nicely in the middle. But again, this is really useful. I love it because it's so imperfect. Inside it has heat-proof interfacing because obviously it holds my nightly cup of tea, so it has to protect my desk. But it's really bright and it's really cute. Next one that I've now made a million of are these pen holders or pencil whatever holders. So the elastic then just goes over a journal, a book, whatever you want. You know, this fabric combination together, yeah, it's a bit weird, it's a bit ugly, and the stitching is, well, not a color I would have chosen, seeing as it's a tan, nor is my stitching particularly straight. This is the closing from when I had to turn it inside out, but you know what? It's functional, and it taught me a lot about how to sew in elastic. so that it's nice and secure, because obviously that's a tension point. But it also taught me about how to turn something inside out from a really small hole as well, and make sure that your orientation is correct. This thing is one of my absolute favorites. So this holds my headphones. I don't have Apple AirPods, I have Shocks. So this was entirely drafted by myself, figuring out, you know, the exact dimensions I need. I also didn't want poppers or Velcro or anything to hold that closed. So instead, I did an extra stitch here so that it doesn't open fully, but kind of opens like an envelope. And then that is just enough space to slip my Shocks in. But when that's closed, my headphones can't slip out. You'll notice this orange fabric and the lining are the same. That is actually a bedsheet that I had scraps of, and I thought it was just useful. These two are from the same project line. You'll notice that I'm a little bit into these things at the moment and making everything really useful. I've been testing out a few different Keychain Wallet patterns to find out which one I like the best. This was my first one. As you can see, it is really tight. It is busting a little bit. And I think what I did wrong was I installed the interfacing at the wrong step. So then it made my seams here really tight. And these cards are just, they're stuffed in. It is so tight for the cards. But I think this is actually my favorite way to have a card wallet, just like this. Maybe there's a way to make like a slot here to hold some cash. That'd be really useful, but I need to test out that pattern a little bit more. Goes onto your keyring. Maybe this is a little bit long. Go for a bit shorter next time. The next coin wallet I made has 3 separate pockets, so this was a much easier pattern to follow, and I liked it because of the 3 separate pockets to hold cards, cash, and even coins. But there's a few things that I did. I tried to edit the pattern because I wanted a bit more space, so I can't remember which dimension I changed, but one of them, and so it meant that I had a little bit more space around the cards like this. But then my biggest issue is then when I sewed it all together and then I sewed this part in, I sewed it into the wrong place because I hadn't accounted for this curve and everything. So once I sewed it in there, it meant that when it would hang from the key ring, it would end up hanging more like this, with the wallet then pointing upside down. So if I didn't close it properly, everything would fall out, which was not ideal. So I didn't want to unpick everything and do it again. So my solution was I just fold this over and then folded this through, and you see how I've got that stitching there to make it more perpendicular. That seems to have solved the problem. So that now at least when it hangs on the key ring, it hangs more like that. The next thing that I realized I made a mistake with was the direction. I didn't really want upside down strawberries on this side. On the back, they're the right way, but on the front, well, the part that I look at the most, they're upside down. Not too big of a deal, but it is the way it is. It's still really cute though, and I've had loads of comments from people on it. Next one is my Ruffle pouch. I love this so much. It's really nice and poofy, and I think it's just so girly and cute. The ruffles took me forever to do because my thread kept snapping. I think next time what I do is make the ruffles a little bit thinner, not quite so wide, maybe about half the width. I also did not finish the edge there, which was not in the tutorial I followed. I probably should have realized that myself. And then the zip, I mistakenly picked up the wrong zip and installed that, so you can see that it's too short, which is a bit of a bummer. You can see with the stitching of my zip that I skipped too close because the zip has shifted, Then I unpicked it and I redid the stitching, but I didn't put the needle back exactly where it was, so now it's a bit wonky on this side. Here you can see the zipper is a tiny bit wonky, but it's not too bad really. If I open it up, I haven't closed the stitching up here yet, which I've only just noticed, but I think that might be okay because I'm planning on installing a strap, so then this becomes a bit of a shoulder handbag. And onto my laptop sleeve. This one was really fun, but a couple of really big things is like the attachment of this tie. The pattern I followed had mentioned to attach it like this, whereas next time I think I would attach it underneath the bias, so then it looks much neater and I don't have this ugly stitching here. The other problem was I forgot to change my thread. I would have preferred to use a darker brown thread, but I ended up sticking with this white. Next issue is that when I was doing the bias binding attachment, I didn't leave enough at the end here to then fold over nicely. So this is actually the raw edge that I had to zigzag stitch to clean it up. And then as I was going around, because I was sewing with this side up, you can see that it's quite straight and neat, but because this was underneath it so bulky from the thick batting I used, which I hadn't accounted for, it was a bit of a struggle to pull the bias around to get it to stitch nicely in place. So you can see spots where my stitches have come off and on and everything, and like here, because it's a little bit thicker for the corner, it's skipped around. And so going a bit further round, you can still see where I've skipped off. And then all the way to the end, where again I forgot about that raw edge and tucking it in, so it's just zigzag stitched like this to close it off at least. But you can't really see most of those from afar. And that's just some of the things I've been working on. All of the mistakes and some of the odd problem-solving strategies I used along the way. I've made a lot of other projects. I've even made some clothes, which have surprisingly turned out really well for such a beginner, and I wear them with such pride. I'm still learning a lot, but I think that's what makes all of this so enjoyable for me, and figuring out all of these problems and learning how to solve particular little bits. If you're also learning to sew or just thinking about starting, I hope this video helps you to see that it's okay to make all these mistakes. I hope it gives you a bit of reassurance that mistakes are going to happen and you're going to love them anyway. And nothing has to be perfect, but it is all so worth doing. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm learning and what I create, then stick around and subscribe.